What is shaking, everybody? It is episode 35, Golden Mike Live, with my boy, Michael OBrien. Michael OBrien, executive coach. Michael OBrien, author. Michael OBrien, who's going to talk about slaying these negative thoughts that we all have to be able to achieve success. I cannot wait to hear your take on slaying some of these negative thoughts. Michael OBrien wants to tell you, Michael OBrien, I can't wait, brother. It's Taco Tuesday. Let the fun begin.
Hey, brother, it's Taco Tuesday. Like, I picked the best freaking day to be with you.
You have a
Tuesday, Taco Tuesday,
Hats Tuesday. It's all good.
You're in the city. We're only miles away, but we're connected here on the computer. Like, it's
literally.
We're
literally
sunshine.
miles away because I'm in New York City today.
Yeah, like we're like 10 miles away, but then we could have done this together in the same building, dude.
Oh, now you're making me sad.
No, it's okay. You know, next time you come up, we'll hook up together live in person.
I'm gonna be here next week, so be careful what you ask.
Yeah, man, I'm here, brother.
So for those of you in New York City who have not met me, my name is Mark Cordone. I am a positive psychology coach. How are you feeling today? What is your emotional state, right? And then the second thing is this. Are you functioning in full fulfillment and meaning? So, Michael OBrien, are you feeling good and functioning in true fulfillment today?
Absolutely. Dude, like, I had since my last bad day, we're going to talk about this. Every day is a choice, and you show up, and you can choose to be happy, and you can choose to be aligned with your purpose and your mission and your values and all that stuff. And that's a choice I make every freaking day.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love this idea of choice. You got some, I'm tasting hints of Viktor Frankl in there.
You're the
choices that you make every single day.
Victor is going to come into the conversation. I just, a little foreshadowing. Nice. Just saying.
Nice. Now let's go out to all of you there. If you're feeling good and if you're functioning in full fulfillment on this Tuesday, can you give Michael and I some hearts? Michael, can you make some hearts?
I can do a little heart, a little love, a little love.
Oh yeah. Make some hearts.
Little hearts.
Make some hearts.
We got hearts.
We got. I don't know if you like Genesis.
Phil Collins.
Yeah, that is Phil Collins. Phil Collins, the lead singer of Genesis, on the show. Got a pair of headphones and is listening at work. Yes. Can you hear it in the air tonight?
Yes.
Phil Collins.
So, Mark,
Collins,
you need to do the air drum, Phil Collins. You know, you need all that, brother. One of the classic songs of all time. I'm just saying.
Phil Collins, it is amazing having the real Phil Collins here in our community. It's awesome seeing you every single day, brother. Now let me throw this out there. We just asked you about some hearts, right? If you're feeling good and functioning in full fulfillment. You know, what if you're not feeling too good today, right? What if your throat is sore? You got some chills. Well, that doesn't mean you're not necessarily feeling great. Or what if you're going through a time right now and you're beginning to question what is actually fulfilling for you. What is it that your purpose on life, what your purpose in the world is here to do? It's okay to be in that sort of cognitive dissonance state. It's cool to feel those feels, baby. That's parts of the ups and downs and all arounds of life. So give us a thumbs up if you're right in the middle of that roller coaster, baby. Because that's part of life. That's part of life. Finally, Donna Ray Schwartz.
Hey, little heart, like, love it.
Wanted to say hello.
Hey, Donna Ray.
Phil Collins, wanting to make friends. Phil Collins.
I want to know, Mark, is your friend Jorge coming on? Because he's coming on, right? because
Jorge.
because I came on this show because I'm hoping to get an invite to Puerto Rico from Jorge. So I'm waiting.
It's been thrown out.
I'm waiting. So
Jorge, where are you?
yeah, where's Jorge, man?
I'm sure he'll show up, but let's flag him down.
Yes.
Let's flag up Jorge.
Come on.
So finally, whether it was a great week, whether it was a week of fulfillment, or maybe a week where there was a lot of dissonance going on, if you're hopeful about the future, if you're optimistic about today or tomorrow being even better than it was last week, give me a big old wow face.
Wow.
We got to get better than that, Michael O'Brien. Give us a wow face, Mike.
I'm gonna give you one right on the computer too, which is sort of like wowing me back, which is weird, but that's okay. It's important.
It's so meta, brother. It is so meta.
It all comes around, brother.
So, Michael O'Brien, you have quite the story, and I want to just have you open up wherever it is that you want to open up with your story. So, with that said, what is your story?
So, what is my story? So, I'm gonna bring people back to a time where there was no social media. I'm gonna bring you back before Facebook, before LinkedIn, before Twitter, to July 10th, 2001. So if you met me on July 10th, 2001, you saw like a corporate leader, right? I worked at a pharmaceutical company right here in New Jersey, had 2 daughters, still have 2 daughters. My youngest was 7 months old at the time. My oldest was 3.5 years old, married 7 years. And so on paper, right, like life looked pretty good. Like I was the dude behind you in line at Whole Foods, right? So I was that guy, right? I had a pretty good life, but here's the thing. I was chasing happiness. I was like that hamster on its wheel. And I'm going to pull out like an old Zig Ziglar quote. I was living basically a do have be lifestyle, meaning like do work my ass off, have all those material possessions, like, you know, the car, the title, the money, the vacations, whatever. And then I'll have happiness or I'll have whatever. And so I kept on chasing and chasing and chasing. And again, hey, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have LinkedIn to tell us what to do. But I was in this do have be, and it was stressful. So I thought like I had to have all the answers at work because I was the boss. I thought I had to have many of the answers at home too, like Superman. And so what I was doing in between was I was just pouring the stress inside. So on the outside, hey, things look pretty hunky dory, like, you know, rainbows and Skittles. But inside, you know, I'm not going to talk about like it was a hot mess, but it was not as good as it could be. And it was definitely very stressful. And today's society, I think once people learn that you should be vulnerable, right, then all of social media is like, how can I one up everyone on the worst story ever, right? So I ain't gonna go. I ain't gonna go there. But so that's how my life was, and I think it's pretty typical of like a lot of people, even today. And I was really big on comparison, like comparing what I had versus like how much money I made against someone else, titles, you know, what the Joneses were doing. And so you know this from your work, man, is that when you get into the comparison trap, all you're doing is judging, and what you're really doing is judging yourself. And I was pretty freaking awesome at judging myself. So I had that little monkey mind, inner critic gremlin going, but I was trying to, you know, basically put on the mask and trying to fool everyone. Then, you know what? You know this. The universe gets the last laugh, right? The universe, when it needs to correct things, it starts to correct things. And so on July 11th, 2001, I had my last bad day. So, and I, you know, like just let that marinate, because a lot of people are like, your last bad day. Like, and I often ask people like, well, when was your last bad day? And they're like, well, maybe today or maybe yesterday. So my last bad day was July 11th, 2001. So I'm an avid cyclist. So I brought my bike out to a company meeting. A lot of people will know these meetings come out on a Monday, leave on a Friday. People would go golfing or go to the spa on Thursday. But I brought my bike out because I was like, hey, we're in New Mexico. I want to ride my bike in New Mexico, cross it off one of those, 50 states to ride in during your lifetime bucket list things. And I thought I would avoid the hotel gym, get some fresh air before the meeting. And on the fourth lap of a loop I created on the hotel property, out the service road, up the main entrance, I came around a bend, and a Ford Explorer was heading right towards me, going about 40 miles an hour. He crossed totally into my lane. And I remember the sound of me hitting his grill, the sound of me flipping into his windshield, the screech of his brakes, and then the thud I made as I came to the asphalt below. Knocked me unconscious, as you would imagine. Now, when the EMTs arrived, I asked the only question that another cyclist can really appreciate, right? And it was this: how's my bike, right? So I was like, that was the question I asked. So it was my way to sort of like infuse a little humor in what was a majorly tense situation. Because from energy leadership, like I could pick up on the vibe that things were grim. We were in a catabolic state. The thought of moving was the most pain I ever had, right? So moving was like 10x it, right? But just the thought of moving, I was like, I knew things were grim, things were dire. And I kept on telling myself, hey, Michael, whatever you do, don't fall asleep. I started willing myself, stay awake, don't fall asleep, stay awake, don't fall asleep. Because I thought, Mark, if I fell asleep, I would never wake up again. It was my way. Like, if I felt I could control it, then I could handle it. And it was just like how it was before the accident. Like, if I could control everything at work and life, like I could make it all work. And then when the helicopter landed to take me to the trauma center in Albuquerque, I made a commitment. If I live, then life will be different. I'm going to stop chasing happiness. And I was on a flight. It was my first helicopter flight ever. I was nervous about that. 19 minutes. I never took my eyes off my flight nurse. And I landed on top of the roof at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, down the elevator shaft, into the trauma center, met my surgeon. And the next 4 days, I don't remember a thing. First surgery took 10 hours. I needed 34 units of blood product. And the next 4 days, I was in 4 days plus, I was in the ICU. And then I came out. And I started living my next day after my last bad one.
So let me ask you this. On your bad day, July 11th, how much were you, because there was a certain amount of, I want to call it normalizing going on, but just sort of being like, how's my bike? Right? Like sort of, joking, normalizing. How much of you were content or not content? How much of you were thinking about, fuck, I really could die? And were you like, man, we're like, like how people are like, they replay their lives over. No. And was that something that was going through your mind?
Totally. So I did a video about this and I posted it on Facebook a few weeks ago. So I know you'll recall this, but there's a woman named Bronnie Ware who did in Australia, who did the 5 regrets of the dying. So that didn't come out, I think, until 2004, 2005, or maybe even later. But on my day, I had all those. I had all 5 rummaging through my head. And I was like, I did really think, is this what it feels like to die? And what the hell? What the fuck are you, how'd you let this happen? And so regret, time at work, not staying in touch with your friends, not allowing myself to be happier, all of them came rushing back. Now I didn't have my life flashed before my eyes in terms of the fast forward, right? But the thing is, the replay of all the things I could have done but didn't do, that came back, right? So that's why I made the deal.
So what were the things that you were thinking about? I mean, pretty jacked up, right? You were pretty jacked up. You're thinking about all the things that you didn't get to do. And what were some of the things?
Well, so yeah, I was jacked up. They set up an IV morphine drip, but you got to, obviously this, and everyone watching, like I was jacked up on cortisol and adrenaline, and like the whole fight and flight was like 100x. For me, it was like all the small shit that I worried about what are people thinking about me, all that comparison, all the judgment, all that worry, all the not stepping in and doing the stuff that we're meant to do, all the stuff that held me back. It was like all that stuff. It wasn't necessarily like, it wasn't like I wish I told my kids I love them more, because I would tell them I loved them all the time, right? And my wife too. So it wasn't that stuff, but it was all the small stuff that held me back, right? Like I know you deal with coaches that are like new coaches, and there's so much little stuff that holds them back from doing their life purpose, to their passion and making a difference. And I did like all that. Like every moment I spend in comparison is a moment I spent in judgment, which is a moment I spent not doing the stuff that could bring out my best and actually make me like the best version of who I could be. And I regretted all that stuff. That's the stuff that got me pissed off. And the thing is, I was just chasing happiness. I thought like, once I got something, once I got that cool car, I would be happy. Once I got the title, I'd be happy. Once that meeting was over, I'd be happy. And here's the rub with a little bit of the universe. It's like all that stuff happened, and for a moment, I was happy. But like vapor finish lines have a way of disappearing, and then when it left, the happiness left with it. But it left behind hope. The hope that if I kept on chasing, maybe I'd catch it for good. Then I realized that whole do have be actually has to be like a be do have, right? And flip the script. But that came much later in my recovery.
Gotcha. Let's talk about be do have in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your recovery now. Major work done on you. You're full of blood transfusions probably, and killers. You don't remember shit. So you probably don't remember going under. You probably went under hoping you'll wake up alive.
Yeah, well, I went under hoping, like, again, the question was, or the deal I made, if I live, life's going to be different. So I came out of that. So I came out of the ICU. So here's the deal with that. Like I came out of the ICU, and there's photos. If people are really interested, they can like find the photos of me in the ICU, like how messed up I was. But I was swollen. I was like the Michelin Man. And I came out of the ICU in the middle of the night, and they wheeled me into the orthopedic wing, and I was all by myself. So here I am in horrible pain still, right? So the pain meds aren't really helping. I'm in traction, which is like an erector set, right? And I'm all by myself. Like visiting hours at the hospital were over. My wife was back at the hotel. No doctors were around. And I was like, where the freak am I? The next day, the doctors came in and started telling me about my accident. They were like, the guy had a revoked license. He shouldn't have been driving that day, but he was. They told me about a lifetime of limitations, dependencies, more surgeries. They started telling me everything I couldn't do. So since we go where our eyes go, right? Like I started just seeing like all my limitations, all the can't, all that, can't do, don't have anymore. And as a result, right, my energy shifted. I went pretty catabolic. I was like level 1, level 2. And I was just, I was angry, frustrated, scared, worried, like all of them, even revengeful. I was like, when the hospital got dark, I was like, how can I get back at the driver? Like he took from me, therefore I'm going to take from him, an eye for an eye, right? It's only fair. And then, so when I wasn't thinking about that, I was just basically crying myself to sleep, asking myself, like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Like, this stinks. Life is not fair. And the thing to keep in mind too, Mark, is like up until this moment in time, nothing really bad had ever happened to me, right? Like I lived like a pretty vanilla suburban lifestyle, right? I was like, which is what most people live, right? And so we didn't have like major disease in our family or like anything like this. So this was like taking our lives, and tipping it upside down and shaking it violently. So all of a sudden, my wife, we got 2 young daughters. My wife is like, holy cow, I'm not sure, she came out of the hospital, when she got to the hospital eventually, the doctor said, hey, we did the best we could. Your husband's been in a very bad accident. The next 72 hours are going to be critical. They told her if I was 10 years older at the time or not in shape, I probably would have died before I even got to the hospital because what happened is that besides breaking a whole bunch of everything, the left femur shattered. And when the left femur shattered, it lacerated my femoral artery. So all that energy I felt was that without the words, like, hey, life is in its balance, I felt because I had a lacerated femoral artery when I was waiting for the helicopter to take me to the trauma center.
Oh, good God, man. I don't even know where to go with this one. But
hey, the good news, dude, happy story.
The good news is
happy story. We're talking, right? That's the good news. That's the punchline is like, we made it through. And so, hey, Jorge joined.
Yeah, Jorge wanted to say hi. Jorge, let us know what's up. Let us know what's up. Phil Collins. Phil Collins got in trouble with his boss.
Time to get a new boss, Phil.
Time to get a new boss, Phil. Jorge, Mark, smile. I'm smiling already. It was an intense story, okay? And why are you not talking to Michael? For God's sake.
How you doing, man?
Inspiration.
Thank you,
there you go.
Thank you, dude.
Inspiration. Chrissy Collins wants to come in and say, hey guys. Chrissy, it is good to see you. So I want to ask you this, Michael. You've gone through quite a bit of trauma, which could be kind of funneled down to the act of one human being. You could make that argument that this one human being made a terrible choice that day.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the person who hit you?
So that great question. So for the longest time, I would pack a little bit of that catabolic energy in my back pocket against him. And over time though, I was forgiving him. As time went on, I started to forgive him a little bit more each day. But I write about this in my book. So in 2012, we took a family vacation to Europe, and we went to Poland, to Krakow, and then we took the train to Birkenau, Auschwitz, the concentration camp. And there's a woman named Eva Kor. She lives in Terre Haute, Indiana. She runs a Holocaust museum. So her family was sent to Auschwitz during the war. And so she's a twin. And so those that know the war know that twins got special treatment by the Nazis. And she survived. So did her twin sister. And so we were there to get a private tour of the death camp, of the concentration camp. And so it's in the middle of July, dude. And it's like hot. It's like death. It is death. Hot as Hades. And she's in a golf cart giving us a tour. And we're like emotionally drained from it and physically drained. And someone asked her, like, well, how do you feel about the Germans and the Nazis today? Do you hate them? And she was like, no. And I was like, whoa. Well, and then to be honest, I was a little like, I needed some water, and I was starting to like tune out a little bit, just like trying to look around and trying to like process what we were in, because it's like so intense. She's like, no, I've forgiven them. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because I do. Because if I carried around all the animosity that I have for them, I wouldn't be able to show up basically as the best version of who I could be. And in that moment, man, I was like, if she can do that, like I can get rid of the 20% of baggage or whatever percentage it was that I had for the driver. And in that moment, I was like, I'm letting it all go. Because like, I believe that it's like, it is a journey that we're all on, and we're going to take like each day we have an opportunity to make it a little bit better. And I knew like holding on just like 20% of that bitterness wasn't, and resentment wasn't going to bring out the best in me if I was going to like sort of go on to self-mastery. Right. So, but that trip in 2012 in Eva Kor, like had a profound impact about just the the art and the need to be forgiving. And
wow.
and I he made a bad call that day, but you know what? Like, I totally believe like it was meant to be. Like, and now what I try to do is I try to help other people like avoid their SUV, right? So like, I went through it. I'm glad I went through it. I'm a better person because I went through it. But I do try to help people try to avoid their own pain and suffering and SUV, their version of it. But yeah, so I let go, and so every day on July 11th, right, every year rather, like it's a special day. It's like a second birthday. And my oldest daughter last year wrote an awesome blog post. I was like so proud. She was like, "Dad, I want to write a blog post about the driver who hit you." And I was like, "Huh?" I'm like, "I don't know, honey." I'm like, "I don't know if I want to go there." She's like, "I really want to do it." I said, "Well, just send me a draft before you post it. Just do me that." Because I don't monitor her blog. Like, I read it because I'm a fan, but she gets to post whatever she wants to post. And so for her, from her perspective, she was like, "Hey, you know what? For our family, this is a special day because life changed on this day." And she wanted to know, like, did the driver who hit me, did his life change on this day too? Does he think about, like, we think about life and about how we're showing up and all that stuff every July 11th. And she wanted to know, like, does the driver also think about, like, how this day changed him? Does he show up differently on July 11th? Now, I don't know the answer to that, but it's a really great question. So, it was a pretty freaking awesome blog post. If I can be totally biased and like totally like love on my daughter's blogging and stuff like that, which I think I'm allowed a little bit. So,
I think it's such an awesome way to really extrapolate growth out of trauma, right? Because that's one of the things that I work on is post-traumatic growth. And we often forget that on the other side of things is this person who, is it a he or she who drove that car?
It's a he. Yeah, and he was he has a life too.
The kind of trauma that person must be going through. You can only hope for growth in the form that it came with you and your family. Now the question that I do have for you is, let's say a time machine took you back to July 10th.
Yeah.
Right? Business as usual, right? Now the thing is as you go back to July 10th, there's only one decision you can make. You can decide to get on that bike or not. But you don't know the result of what will come. You don't know what you will learn from not being on that bike or from getting on that bike. Would you get back on that bike?
115%, without a doubt. Knowing, and hey, we went through a lot, right? And like our time, our time together today is, limited. So we, all the nitty gritty I can't share, but I would absolutely get back on the bike. Like what happened to me, like gave me an opportunity to change my perspective on all aspects of how I was showing up. Right. So, sometimes we're so narrow in our perspective, but it gave me just enough of a shift to like, look at life differently. Hey, if I don't get on that bike, like you and I aren't chatting. Right.
No.
And you know what? And maybe there's someone watching. Maybe it's Jorge. Maybe it's Phil Collins. Maybe it's someone else, right? So there's one thing that we say today that they take and they put it into their lives. Because I'm a big believer that if you change a life anywhere, you change lives everywhere. And so it totally changed my life. Now, did we go through a lot of crap? Yeah. But the thing is, I think my marriage is stronger because of it. My bond with my kids is stronger. I don't compare myself to anyone else anymore. Now, still, I still have my moments, right? I still have my moments where my monkey mind and my inner critic shows up, because I'm still human. But I live. Bless you. So I lived that day with someone that told me, went through IPEC with me, the training that we share, said, hey, you didn't die that day for a reason. Now, I may not necessarily, I think I know what the reason is today. That reason may change like 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But because maybe the truth unveils itself at a later date. But right now, if I can help a few people avoid their SUV, then how cool is that? And and that's, it's also like I know we talked about it before. It's like just the ability to be resilient, like fall down 7 times, get back up 8, and just like keep going. And I think that's what you need in life. In the world of like 10xing this and 100xing that, there's something simple about just showing up every day, and you keep pedaling, or like Dory from Nemo, like you keep swimming and you just keep going. And sometimes just by keep your persistence, your resilience, you can find the answer. It sort of it appears. But yeah, no, I would definitely get back on the bike. I think if I didn't get back on the bike, I would have just kept on chasing happiness, and I never would have been happy in the present moment. And there's a real cost to that.
Well, let me ask you this then. How can we start to slay our negative stories without having to get hit by a car and go through all this shit that you went through?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say is that we have to learn how to self-regulate as adults. Like when we were kids, right? And, positive psychology will talk about this. Like, I don't think stress is our big enemy, right? And I know others feel the same way. Like stress gets a bad label because through stress, we actually get growth, right? The post-traumatic stress growth, right? That you coach to. So stress isn't our enemy, but our lack of recovery is. Like we're not recovering enough. And this is more than just sleep, right? So sleep is it, but our ability to sort of like hit the pause button. And self-regulate. When we were younger, like when we were babies, our parents would put a binky in our mouth. Like when we were upset, they would just shove a binky in our mouth, and all of a sudden we would soothe ourselves, right? We would self-regulate and we'd calm down. We'd stop crying, or we'd put our thumb in our mouth. But we can't do that as adults. We can't do that as a coach or as in corporate America. But we can grab what I like to call it, I grab a PBR. Like, and I was just talking to a company today. I go, I need you to grab a PBR. And everyone immediately goes to like a Pabst Blue Ribbon. You want us to drink? And I'm like, no. Yeah. So because I go, no, it's not a Pabst Blue Ribbon, because life's too short to drink bad beer. Right. And I don't care how you spin it. PBR is still bad beer from where I come from. Right. So, but a PBR in my way of thinking, it's a micro meditation of a pause, breathe, and reflect. So I mentioned up front that we're going to talk about Viktor Frankl. So one of his quotes was meaningful to me as I was recovering, is that we're not defined by our life events, but really how we respond to our life events. And he has another, like the time, there's a moment between when an event happens and our action. And when we self-regulate better through meditation, PBRing, we actually can lengthen that time between trigger or event and what we say. So I know you know this, Mark, like we're not responsible for our first thought, but we are responsible for our second thought and first action. So meditation is like exercise for our brain to extend that out. So if we get triggered, we can like just have a little bit more space and decide what we want to do next. It gives us our ability to self-regulate. So we're not always hijacked and we're not reacting. We can actually respond. And when we respond and reflect, okay, what do we want to do next? How do we want to show up? How do we want to, what do we want to say? What do we want to do before we hit the send button on that email? Then we can start creating better tomorrows. So I think that the first step is that.
Now, am I hearing you correctly by saying that a lot of the things that you actually learned or are talking about right now, you learned like while you were recovering on the hospital bed?
Yeah. So I did a lot of like I was in the hospital at a weird time because 9/11 also happened. Right. So I was in so I had basically, so I had that dark moment of like, life sucks. I'm a victim. And the thing is, Mark, everyone validated that story. they're like, yeah, you're a victim. This sucks. This is horrible. The driver had a revoked license. Poor Michael. And I was like, yeah, poor me. I'm a victim. And then I had a moment when they flew me back to New Jersey, and I had like this aha, and it was, obviously it felt like one big moment, but I do believe there was like micro moments leading up to the big moment. That
sure, absolutely.
I was like, if I'm going to be the best I can be, the best husband, father, person, leader, whatever I can be, but I led with like best husband and father and person.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about the comparison. I had to shift my mindset. I had to like lose the self narrative that I was a victim, but rather I'm a victor, right? So, or really I'm resilient. Like I had to change my self narrative as a way to sort of slay my story. And I just started doing like work on my own. Like I started like so when I had that big aha moment, the next morning I woke up, got myself out of bed into my wheelchair, and I wheeled myself to a quiet place in the hospital. And I basically had my first meditation session. And back then I didn't even know what meditation was, man. Like, today in 2018, we're like, oh yeah, meditation, that's been with us forever. It's not really like 2000, like go back to 2001, the iPod wasn't out yet. Right. So, like I just like a little time capsule reality check. Like that's like we didn't know Brene Brown and vulnerability. Like we didn't know like.
Oh no, Brene Brown was not punk rock yet.
Yeah, she wasn't like. There was no TED Talk. There was no like power posing. There was like none of this.
Power posing and TED Talk.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So like, and so I basically. I set my priorities for the day. Like I did pull some pages from like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, and like how did I want to show up? How did I do? Did I want to like continue to lead my life in a a do have be way, or flip the script around? And so I had like, if the pure meditation gurus and experts and teachers out there looked back at my first meditation session in my wheelchair, they'd probably say, well, it wasn't technically meditation, but you know what? It was just enough time for me to get my head on straight in terms of like, how did I want to show up for those in my life that day? And I developed this mantra, like I'm going to work my tail off today to create a better tomorrow. Work my tail off today to create a better tomorrow. The next day I would do the same thing. Wake up today, work really hard. And this was back in the day where hard work was just hard work and we didn't call it hustle. Right. So, so like we've called the hard work hustle now because it's, hey, and I love Gary Vee, but like Gary.
I was about to say it's a bunch of Gary Vee stuff.
So Gary, I love you to death, but we just called it hard work back in the day. And I would just work hard today to create a better tomorrow. And I just kept on sort of building that whole keep pedaling stuff. But yeah, I was sort of working on myself, doing that inner work on myself when I was in the hospital because I knew I had to in order to become a better version of who I could be. And then later I found IPEC, and it just was like the language was magical to like what I was working on. I didn't call it energy back then, but I called it vibe. I called it like how I was showing up. I used different language, but it's like in the same spirit, right? Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We've gone full forward into sort of your recovery, this sort of elevation that you experienced in terms of consciousness. What would you say has been the most surprising thing that's happened to you since your worst day?
The most surprising thing. That's a great question, Mark. I think it's my ability to like I've grown my ability to self-regulate and like really sort of own my story of resilience. I think that's coming out of it. Like I was always sort of a resilient kid growing up, but like I found a way to sort of fine tune that. And basically, because of what happened, but also just like being able to like calm everything down and like just be really thoughtful and chill. That to me, like coming off of like what was like, I could have gone one or two ways. I could have like curled up in a ball and been pissed at the world or gone a completely different way. And that's the way I chose to go. It was about choice. and developing more of that ability to sort of self-regulate. And when my inner critic gets going, because, you know, I have clients who ask me like, well, do you ever get upset anymore? I go, yeah, I get upset all the time. But I've just learned that I can shift out of those moments faster than ever before. Like the more the more we do the work, the easier it is to shift out of our moments when we are stressed, when we're in our head. And I think that's one of the biggest surprises, and why that's important is it changes how I show up in all my different relationships. So I can be there for the person. I can listen better. I can connect better. I'm not listening to reply. I'm really listening to connect and understand. With that, there's empathy. There's more love. There's more trust. And I say all that, and I also want to underscore, I'm not perfect. You know, I'm filled with a little wabi sabi myself. Like, you know, I'm broke. I do think I'm broken, but better, right? So I have my moments. I have my moments where I'm multitasking, and I'm not doing everything that I might preach or suggest. But I don't beat myself up anymore. If I do that, I know that the next breath I can get back to how I want to show up.
Sure. Awesome. So let's go to this. I think with one of my final questions, I want to go to your idea of be, have, and do.
Yeah.
Because before we started off with you talking about do, have, and be, and that kind of landed you on a hedonic treadmill of happiness where you're always chasing it, right?
Yeah.
What is talk a little bit about when you completely reverse the this model, how it does result in you being able to achieve complete success when it comes to sort of creating your dream life.
Yeah, no, great question, Mark. So by flipping the script from going from like how I was before of like, you know, do, have, be, and then starting with be, do, have. So we'll take happiness as an example. So show up every day. I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to do the things that happy people do, like gratitude and empathy and kindness. And since when we throw out good energy into the universe, we get good energy back. We get more of it. Like when we give, and we give without expecting anything back in return, we usually get back a whole bunch, right? So then we actually have more happiness, right? And so what I share in my story, I give the reader 20 ways of being so they can move from human doer to human being. And so one of them, the last one is be happy. The third one, as we talked about, is be forgiving, right? So it's just, well, what do forgiving people do? Well, they're going to be forgiving. And so they let things go. They don't hold on to grudges. They're not skeptical, right? And so, and as a result, they can actually forgive more and let some things go so they don't carry around in their backpack all that like negative mojo. So, so I choose to, like, going back to like anyone's values is like one of mine is like be healthy. All right. So I'm going to show up today. I'm going to be healthy. Well, what do healthy people do? Well, healthy people have like good spiritual, emotional connection, good relationships. There's also the physical health. Like, what do you eat? How do you hydrate? How do you move your body? And like, so if you do those things, then you actually have more health. So like reverse engineering it for me allowed me to sort of change the script, right? And change the story. I know you do a lot of work with like self-narratives and all that stuff like that through positive psychology. So it was a self-narrative that I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be healthy in this moment. And so does everyone else watching and listening, and those that haven't joined today. Like, we, as human beings, we deserve happiness, and we can make that choice every day when we get up, to set our priorities around that. And then at the end of the day, before our head hits the pillow, we can express gratitude for what we had in the day. Because my last bad day is my last bad day because I choose to pick my labels wisely. We only label something after it's over, right? And so at the end of the day, we can choose to label our day any way that we want to. And so I hey, some days I have challenging days, but I don't have to label it as a bad day. I can label it as, hey, a good day with some challenges in it. And even the challenges can be something that we can express gratitude about, because our challenges actually make us better once we get through it.
Awesome. So that's all in the book, from what I'm hearing.
That's all in the book, and with the
that's
book,
awesome.
All the proceeds go to charity in the book. So I wrote the book not for making money. Like, so many people came to me and said, "You got to write your book. You'll get speaking gigs. It'll be marketing for your company," and that's not to like hate on anyone that's written a book for money. Like, so love it. It's awesome. I'm a big book reader. So, but for me, I wasn't getting there. And I decided, like, we're going to write the book. It's going to be about the message of mindset, the message of a strong tribe, a strong Peloton. And I decided to give the money to World Bicycle Relief, because they help girls conquer the challenge of distance by giving them mobility, something we take for granted here in the Western world. Like, I lost my mobility, so now my story helps girls in countries like Kenya, Malawi, and Zaire gain mobility, so they can stay in school longer, they can get to healthcare, they can get to the marketplace. And when they do that, they have more economic vitality, they have more independence and more empowerment. And then you've just changed a life halfway around the world. And I know you know this, like, you change a life anywhere, you change lives everywhere. And so the more books we sell, the more bikes we build, the more lives we change. Not only for the girls that get the bikes, but hopefully for the reader who reads the book.
Oh, absolutely love it. You're talking about public health and shifting ecosystems through storytelling. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Michael OBrien, we are only miles away, and I'm hoping we're going to get together a little bit sooner next time I'm in New York City. This has been an absolute pleasure, man. And
awesome. It's been a ball. Like, as you know, we sort of found ourselves by the luck of the algorithm at Facebook. And I'm just pumped that we found each other. So
I am too.
We got to share our stories together, and with Jorge and Phil and Christy and a whole bunch of other people.
And Allison Prophet, who is now jumping in.
Allison's got a picture of bikes. So
hey now. So
awesome.
There you go. So Michael OBrien, I don't know if you know, but this is how we end every single Golden Mic, with a little bit of a visual action going on, a little a visualization. And over there, I'm taking the Golden Mic here from in Manhattan, and I'm throwing it over to you, right?
I have it, buddy.
You got it?
I got it.
Hold it tight. Hold it tight. Because in the next 2 minutes, that baby is going to be wired and ready to go. It's going to be amplified out to the entire world, translated into every single language, and everyone will be hearing. So, awesome. Michael OBrien, you are now live on the Golden Mic.
Thanks, buddy. So I'm going to relay something I learned from a mentor years ago. So he asked me, Michael, what's your favorite movie? And so I'm going to ask everyone to sort of think back to your favorite movie, your favorite Be Live host, your favorite podcast, maybe your favorite book, show, the one that totally changed your life. So go back to that and really think about that. And think about how it changed your life. Now, a lot of people ask me if, like, The Princess Bride was my favorite movie. There's a story behind that. But the movie that changed my life was Breaking Away, a story about a bike race in Indianapolis. And it fueled my love of cycling. But I want you to think about your favorite book, movie, podcast host, and how it made an impact in your life. Now I want you to think about, like, what if you never got to hear it, you never got to see it, you never got to touch it? How would your life be different? And the reason why you never saw it, you never read it, you never, listened to it, is because the artist behind it sort of believed his or her own inner critic. They believe that no one's ever going to listen to it. No one's ever going to watch the Be Live. No one's going to watch the movie or read the book or watch the TV show. And so why is it worth it? We'll just put it on the shelf. And inner critic, your monkey mind, you're correct. And so that piece of art never touches you. It never gets to change your life. And so my quest to you guys is, you may not have Eat, Pray, Love in you. You may not have Breaking Away in you. You might have Game of Thrones. You might not have the golden mic in front of you. But we all have something within us. Some secret sauce, empathy, compassion, care, leadership, innovation, you name it, that needs to get out in the world. Because just like you were touched by that author, the producer, and the Be Live host, and you might not even know the person, but he or she changed your life, that there's someone out there that needs your secret sauce. And so we need to put our inner critic to the side and just ship it out and share it with the world, because what we all have inside of us is something worth sharing, something that can actually change someone's life. And going back to a theme of our show is that if you change a life anywhere, even if it's just one, you change lives everywhere. And that's what I'll leave everyone with.
The big drop from New York.
Boom.
Michael OBrien, this has been the Golden Mike 35. You have said enough. All his stuff, his website, his book, the Peloton group that he donates to. Check it out. It's all there. We got some goosebumps.
Thanks, Allison.
This is the Michael, myself, we're all out there. We're just doing our thing, right? And so to conclude the show, if you're feeling good and if you're functioning in full fulfillment, my question to you is, what are you going to do to serve the greater good now? My name is Mark Cordone. You've been watching The Golden Mike. This is Michael OBrien.
See
you know how
people.
to get in touch with him. We will like him, share him out, get this baby out, and we will see you soon. Peace.
Peace, Mark. See you guys.